most powerful, dynamic conclusion that you're going to be.
You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game, and we will be doing lots of politics and public policy this evening because we have as our guest State Senator Dan Rutherford, who's running in an uncontested Republican primary for state treasurer. But he's gearing up. I mean, that's right. Even though it's uncontested, you're really fired up, aren't you?
Oh, absolutely. I intend to be the next treasurer of the state of Illinois, Jeff.
Well, we're saying he would be the presumptive nominee because we're taping this show on January 24th, the year 2010. That's about, 9 days before the general election?
Right.
The primary, where you will be anointed the nominee. But on the Democratic side, we should say there is a contested primary there. What is it, Justin Oberman? Robin Kelly?
Two fine individuals are running. Robin Kelly, she is the chief of staff of the current state treasurer. And then Justin Oberman, who is from the Chicagoland area, and he's the son of Alderman Marty Oberman.
All right. And so one of those two individuals will be facing Senator Rutherford come the general election, which will commence on February 2nd. So some of you folks will be watching the show. A lot of you will be watching it after the election. So you'll give us a break and you'll realize you'll know who won. We don't. So we may be making some predictions and talking about some hypotheticals. But you also may be watching it on the website. So that usually goes up. Our YouTube page website goes up within 2 or 3 days. So remember, in general, you're learning this now, but if you want to get ahead of the game and watch the shows before all those other folks watch it on cable, you can do that by going to youtube.com/user/Public Affairs TV or simply www.publicaffairs.tv.com. And Dan, you've been, this is 10 years in the State House, right?
I have been in the State House 10 years.
And then 8 years in the State Senate.
And we'll be 8 years at the end of 2010.
Okay. So you're in your 18th year.
Correct.
You were elected in 92, right?
The first election was in 92.
You were one of the Fab Five? No, you weren't. That was the year of the Fab Five, but you came in when the Fab Five state senators got elected.
Yeah.
And that was Peter Fitzgerald, Steve Rauschenberger, Pat O'Malley, Dave Severson, and I always forget the
Chris Lawson.
Chris Lawson.
But I guess
the day.
Yeah, but I guess the point is who designates them as Fab Five? Because you know what, there was Fabulous Five over the House too.
There were?
Absolutely.
So where were the Fab Five in the House?
Rob Blagojevich.
He's certain.
He was elected in 92.
You want to highlight that you came in in the freshman class with Rob Blagojevich?
Well, to the extent that it's reality, and to some extent, yes, because I know Rod Blagojevich, and when I went through this whole process of seeing him melt down Illinois government and the ethics and the process we had, when I actually sat there in the Senate as one of the judge and jury to determine whether he would be thrown out of office or not, I came at it with a perspective of having served with the guy too, not just as the governor, but also as a legislator.
You liked Rob? Rob's his brother.
You know, I got to be candid with you. I enjoyed being around him because he is affable, he is interesting. I did not at all like working with him in the governance of the state of Illinois because I think he didn't focus on the things that were important to get policy done.
All right. You essentially convicted him and impeached him. You voted to impeach him.
I voted to remove him from
office. To remove him from office. The House voted to impeach you.
That is
correct.
To remove him from office. There's a technical difference, but you're right.
And that was a 59-0 vote.
It was in the Illinois Senate.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, Jeff, and I don't want to digress too much from our race for state treasurer, but I think this is impactful to the public out there. I've been around the legislature for some time, and what we did in impeaching and removing Rod Blagojevich from office was something never done in modern history in Illinois. And when we sat there and got ready for this roll call, and the Supreme Court Justice himself presided, there was so much silence in that room. It was like the last I heard that was eulogizing the death of a member.
So it was pretty solemn.
It was extremely solemn, and the fact of the matter is, the Constitution of Illinois works, and the process did what it should have done.
All right. And so looking ahead, he's supposed to be go on trial this summer of 2010, right?
It is. There's discussion that it might be pushed back slightly, but yes, it will be during the summer of 2010 and perhaps the early part of the fall.
And your prediction, will he be convicted?
I'm not a lawyer, as you are.
But you have a sense of juries and what they might do.
When I saw the evidence that was presented to the tribunal in the Senate, and when I heard the audio tapes that were played by the House prosecutor, and then I read the charges that were brought by Pat Fitzgerald and the U.S. Attorney, I just don't see how he is not convicted. Now, I don't know if it means on all charges, but there is just so much evidence from the public domain that I've seen. I think Rob Blagojevich is going to be convicted.
All right. But he's a damn good radio guy, right?
He's
doing a radio show with WLS. You may not hear it all the time.
I've heard bits of it, but it goes back to what I said before when I served him. He's an affable guy. I mean, he can bounce on the balls of his feet and sing Elvis Presley like the best of them. It's the problem in governance that I had with him.
And he only needs to find one juror who believes his story, and he's not acquitted, but you get a hung jury.
Right.
And then maybe the government doesn't want to do it again.
Of course, that's a part of the speculation, maybe why he's doing as much PR as he's doing.
You think?
You think? I don't know that
You think Rod might be doing that?
think?
I think you're right. Well, look, let's go over to your race.
Sure.
We'll come back. We'll give a little bit more background about Senator Rutherford during the show, and you can find all that stuff on www.danrutherford.com for his legislative office and what he's doing officially there. And if you want to look at the campaign stuff for treasurer, it's www.danrutherford.org, right?
That's correct.
And you can find all sorts of personal stuff. I mean, there's a lighter side. Is that what they call it?
Oh,
to
absolutely.
Dan Rutherford?
You know what?
You're not all serious stuff.
No.
You're not all counting money. I mean, you want to be a good steward of the funds that the state of Illinois has. But you can have a decent time on a Friday night.
I can have a decent time on a Friday night, but I intentionally,
maybe even a Saturday night.
You know what? Even Sunday mornings, I can have a good time anytime. But what I decided, Jeff, was that beyond just this whole stoic politician type of stuff, I'm very active in Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. But I have posted on my website pictures of when I've traveled. I'm a scuba diver. I mean, that's something. I'm an avid scuba diver, and I've got pictures of the scuba diving. I even post some of my favorite recipes. On my website.
And you laid to rest the famous Bonneville, right? Pontiac Bonneville?
Unfortunately, my Pontiac Bonneville, which had 315,000 miles on her, drove her all over the state campaigning. Unfortunately, she went to the big scrap iron in the sky.
Recycler in the sky.
The recycler in the sky. But I've got a Pontiac G6 now that she's loving it.
Well, look, let's go over to your race. We've got this thing. Alexi Julius is running for the U.S. Senate, but he's the state treasurer. He's there now. He's not running for re-election.
That's right.
And there's been a lot of talk about Bright Start Fund. He claims he took it from a lowly rated fund to highly rated, very successful.
Right.
There's an issue about a car that was charged to managing that fund or doing something with that fund.
I understand.
So Julius is an issue. He's an issue. Is he an issue? Is he going to be an issue in the treasurer's race when you're running, whoever the Democratic nominee is?
If I could just add one more component to that, because the answer to your question is yes to some extent. But our assumption, and obviously because we're talking about this a few days before the primary, our assumption will be that Alexi Julius will be the candidate for the United States Senate. And if that's the case, many of the activities that took place in the Treasurer's office will also be a discussion point within the U.S. Senate race, I would believe, the concerns from there. If the Chief of Staff for the current Treasurer, Robin Kelly, becomes a Democratic nominee, those issues will be a part of our race. So I believe that the issues that took place in the Treasurer's office under Treasurer Giannoulis's watch will be a debatable point, and rightfully so, both in the U.S. Senate race as well as in the Office of State Treasurer.
No matter who's the nominee for the Republican Party, and now the favorite by the polls, they're old polls, but they're polls that we're taking in early December, and that's the only media poll we have to go on, or impartial poll, as of January 24th. Congressman Mark Kirk is way ahead for the Senate seat. So if he is the nominee, but if it's Pat Hughes, whoever it is, they will be making an issue of Julius's management, if Julius is the Democratic nominee in the Senate race, of his management of the Treasurer's office.
I believe that any public office holder that seeks office for retention or a new office, their record within that office is fair game for discussion. And I believe that the issues in regards to, as you mentioned, Jeff, the Bright Start program and the funds that were lost there, and there's all kinds of explanations, but the funds that were lost there, the idea that the office used resources from there to purchase 2 hybrid SUV vehicles, and out of Bright Start marketing
funds
money.
From where? From
the Bright Start marketing money. And
were they marketing the fund by going around? They used the vehicle for marketing?
That is what the answer was that I read in the media, and the response to it was they were using it to market. But with all respect, when you find out funds are in the tank, you don't take and buy vehicles for it. And when you talk to the family members that lost money in those, they are not happy that hybrid SUV vehicles, marketing funds, were being used to go out and buy those.
So the Bright Start Fund is a fund that's set up by the Treasurer's office to assist families in planning and managing their investment funds for their children's college education.
That's correct.
Is that right?
That is correct. And my understanding is that there are 21 portfolios within this entire area. One of them in particular had the major drop to it. And I've been asked a number of times.
What was that major drop? Roughly.
Well, this is still things we're learning, but the last number that I have been exposed to was somewhere around $150, $155 million.
Lost by these parents of college kids, so their kids' education planning took a substantial debt in the financial area.
There's a lot yet to be known, in my opinion. And a question begs itself, what could the treasurer have done or the treasurer's chief of staff have done in light of market conditions, which is an excuse as to why many funds did drop. But the fact is, when it was known and what was done when it was known.
The allegation is it was known by the treasurer's office 8 months before he took action? Is that what
I
the
think
allegation is?
I think, well, there are some that have made that
What would
allegation.
you say, Dan Rutherford?
What Dan Rutherford would say is Dan Rutherford, as treasurer of the state of Illinois, would be more vigilant at it and be more attuned to what's going on with those funds as opposed to waiting until whenever it was discovered. See, you have to, and maybe this is a part of the good thing of Dan Rutherford and maybe part of the problems of Dan Rutherford as far as being so hands-on. I like to be participating in the administration of the functions of my office in the Senate and my office in the private sector, and I will do that as a state treasurer.
What is that office in the private sector?
I'm with a company called Service Master. I
You've
have
been
been
there
for
for
25 years.
Okay.
Actually, in February, it'll be 25 years, and it's a portfolio of service companies, and I still work with the company, and I think that's coming at it from a businessman's standpoint in government is a part of the virtues and the benefits I bring to the office.
Do you do that full-time while you're a state senator?
No,
Part-time?
I've gone part-time with the company now for a number of years.
All right. Well, if Justin Oberman were to win the nomination, and again, we're taping this before the election, but if he were to win the Democratic nomination,
Right.
does that kind of take the Julius issue off the table? Because Oberman's not a part of the treasurer's office. His opponent in that Democratic primary, Robin Kelly, was chief of staff in the treasurer's office, right?
She is chief of staff.
So
That's
she would
correct.
leave it on the table, but
Right.
would, to some extent, would Oberman, if he's the nominee, take the Julius issue off the table?
Well, not
For your race.
I understand. Not being prepared to give my complete campaign strategy right here on TV
Oh,
lines.
why not? We make news all the
Yeah,
time.
well,
Come on.
but I don't want to have
Dan,
is
you know.
what I don't want to have is the other
Nobody's
side.
watching. You can just
don't
whisper
give
to me
me
here.
that. No,
Just
no.
whisper to me.
Is the mic open? Is the mic open? Is the mic open? No, and have somebody else. It kind of talking in a bigger picture to it, though. What we have seen happen is we've had one party have control of all the levers of government in the city of Chicago, highest sales tax rate of any city in the nation. We've seen one party have control of all the levers of county government in Cook County, and we've got the highest taxes that we've seen out there of any county in the state of Illinois. And we've had one party have control of all the levers of government in the state of Illinois now for 8 years. Regardless of which personality becomes the candidate on the Democratic side for treasurer, I believe as the chief financial officer of the state of Illinois, the public of Illinois is going to want to have some changes. The idea of having a two-party dynamic tension is a better check and balance than have one party just take all of the marbles and do with them what they will.
So is this the Chicago 9 that Dan Proft, who's a candidate in the Republican primary for governor, he refers to him as the Chicago 9. There's no lieutenant governor now since the lieutenant governor moved up to Governor Pat Quinn, and we don't replace him in our system.
Right.
So you have the governor, who's a Democrat.
Actually, it's not 9 if you're talking the constitutional officers.
No, it's more, but the
Okay.
constitutional officer would be 5, right?
Well, today we have the governor, absent the lieutenant governor. We have the attorney general,
That's Lisa Madigan, Democrat.
correct? We have secretary of state, Jesse
Jesse White, Democrat.
We have comptroller, Dan Hines,
Democrat.
and treasurer of the state of Illinois, Alexi Giannoulis.
And the governor,
Democrat.
Pat Quinn, Democrat.
And the governor,
And then
Pat
we've
Quinn.
got the Senate president, who's John Cullerton, Democrat.
Correct.
And then we have the Speaker of the House for almost 3 decades,
Right.
Mike Madigan,
Mike Madigan.
Democrat. We've
Exactly.
got the mayor of the city of Chicago, Mayor Daley, Democrat. Cook
Cook County Board President.
Democrat.
Right.
So what is it, Dan says something like, what do they control? Is it, it's 125 and 70, I keep getting it. Is it 125,000 employees and $70 billion in expenditures, or vice versa?
You know,
Tremendous sums.
It is, but I think.
And
the
it's
part
all
that-
one party. That's
and
the
I
whole
think
point.
the point that the public of Illinois has had enough of too much one thing. You will recall, Jeff, in 1994, the Republican Party had the majority of the House, the Senate, and all the constitutional offices, and the pendulum was seen to have swung all the way up to the red side. And then Illinois put it back, and it swung all the way up to the blue side. I see Illinois being more purple.
Okay.
The public of Illinois is going to want to have a balance.
What's the role of the state treasurer? Is it simply to invest the state's monetary assets safely? Is that the main thing?
In simplest of terms, from what the Constitution and the statutes say, the job of the treasurer is to invest the state's monies to get the best return until they're expended. That's as simple as that. There's much more to that.
Within reasonable risk. When you say
Well, that's
this,
the decision. That's the decision of the state treasurer.
when you say best return, I mean you have to.
Yes, that's the decision of the state
Right.
treasurer.
You have to
We've
balance risk with reward.
And
right?
we have now seen Alexei Giannoulis take the Bright Start Fund, and one of those took a tank.
Yeah.
So there was a good deal of risk. So what one needs to do is what's the best return with the best balance of risk, and that's the decision of the state treasurer. Now, there's more to the office, but that's the simplest.
You
of
say
terms.
it's jobs, 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 right?
What I say as the state treasurer of the state of Illinois, my three priorities will be jobs, jobs, and jobs. Absolutely. And the way to utilize that opportunity is by using the bully pulpit of the office of state treasurer. And as pre to our conversation right here, Jeff, we talked about who the officers of the state of Illinois are. There's not one of the opposition party up there. You're going to have one from the opposition party, someone who's a businessman, who has legislative experiences, and is not afraid to point the finger when things are going wrong in the state of Illinois. The public of Illinois deserve it, and the priorities that I intend to take as a treasurer of the state of Illinois are going to be jobs, jobs, and jobs.
Now, Julius might say he views creating jobs, and he would say he did. He refers to 600 jobs he created by browbeating a bank or an investment entity to lend as he wants. Is that the correct thing to do? Because to say to somebody, okay, you want to deal with us, do business with us, we want us to put our deposits in your financial system, financial entity, you should make sure you're lending to this person doing this. Don't close them off because that will lose jobs. Was Julius doing the right thing or wrong thing?
What I believe we need to be doing is actually truly creating jobs, and that's by having a better work environment, a better regulatory environment, a better tax environment in the state of Illinois. That's what will actually create jobs, not because you cajole or threaten to keep a company in certain ways to keep jobs here.
So does that mean you should be using the office as the bully pulpit for tax policy?
I think that it is incumbent upon the treasurer of the state of Illinois to weigh in on issues and discussions dealing with taxes. Yes.
So over the
I think as a leader of the state of Illinois, that is incumbent upon that person to do that.
Would you take a pledge as the state treasurer not to support any net increase in the taxes, the American Tax Reform Pledge?
You know, I've been in elected office now for going on almost 18 years, and during that entire time, I have never signed a pledge to do one thing or another, whether it's in regards to taxes, whether it's to vote for this or that. I think it's inappropriate for someone in an elected public office to go sign a deal on something before they're ever in the environment. That being said, I've never voted for those tax increases. So I believe it is better to go at it to be a rational discussion and not having already said to one side of the issue, you've already made your decision. Such as, do I believe we should have an income tax increase in the state of Illinois today as a sitting state senator? Absolutely not. I've not signed a pledge to that because I think that in order to negotiate with those that do believe we need to have an income tax increase, that you need to come at it in a way to say, let's figure out what the real problem is and have that solution.
But some of the candidates in the Republican primary for governor have signed that pledge.
Sure they have.
Andy McKenna signed the pledge. Dan Proft signed the pledge. Bill Brady signed the pledge.
But I don't know what that means. I mean, I don't know.
You don't know what signing the pledge means?
No, I don't know what the political. I don't do that. I wouldn't do that. I've not done that.
Because you're saying you don't know all the circumstances, or you don't think it's the best way to negotiate? I'm not sure what the point is.
No, my point is I don't believe that somebody signing an agreement on some public policy matter, again, whether it's on taxes and whether it's because the state bird of Illinois should be a cardinal or not. I don't believe you sign pledges and deals like that before you go into the office. Now, you go upon your record and you make your declarations and the like, but no, I don't think
So when
those
you
are
look
appropriate.
and you are a state senator as well, so you've got dual responsibilities here, running for treasurer,
Sure.
but also state senator, and been in that office now for, as you say, your 8th year as state senator. Certainly the issue of whether there is an $11 billion deficit in the state, and if so, should the income tax be increased as one way to deal with that deficit? Pat Quinn says yes. He wants to see about a $4 billion income tax increase. Dan Hines says yes, $4 billion tax increase. I think all the Republican nominees for governor say no, whether they've signed the pledge or not. Prof takes it further and says you should cut taxes, not raise them. What do you say?
My take on it is we should not be raising the taxes. A fair question follow-up is, then what would you do next, Senator? Until we fix the spending problem, there is no way that we should be looking for any dime or dollar out of the pocketbooks of the taxpayers of the state of Illinois. And the two primary areas that must be fixed, because you know what, if Pat Quinn gets his way and raises taxes by 67% like the Senate Democrats passed, or gets his way by raising by 50%,
you voted
like
against that?
I absolutely voted against it.
Against that, okay.
Against it, that
against
is correct.
the 60s, what you call the
increase.
67% increase in
Because
income
that's the House Bill 174, Senate Amendment 2, increased the income tax of the state of Illinois by 67%.
From 3% to 5%.
Passed by all Democrat votes in the Senate. Until we fix the issues, particularly of the pension system of the state of Illinois, and until we fix the Medicaid issue in the state of Illinois, Illinois government deserves no more money. Because if it was given more money today, it'll swallow it like the Jabberwocky out of the Lewis Carroll creature out of the books, and it'll burp and it'll still be hungry come next year.
So, and by fixing the pension system, does that mean you'd favor a two-tier pension system that doesn't change the pensions for the current employees or past employees, but for future employees hired, you would make it into, for the state system, you would make it into a defined contribution system as opposed to a defined benefit system?
You asked two major components within that same breath that you did so well, Jeff. One of them is, would I support a two-tiered pension system? In general terms, subject to the fine details, yes. The other question to that, part of that question was, would I support a defined contribution as opposed to a defined benefit? Subject to all the details, and that's why I'm very careful how I say this, because this tape will show up somewhere else.
You think somebody's watching this?
Yeah, think?
It's just you and me, Dan.
Yeah, it's just you and me and,
Well, a few guys.
and
guys in the control
that
room.
little camera back there. But the idea of a package, I believe, is the appropriate way to go. It is going to all be subject to what is the contribution. It's going to be subject to what the age is and what the benefits and so forth and so on are. But I believe that we need to address this from government, similar to what we've seen big companies deal with it when they ran into bankruptcy. We've seen American Airlines, United Airlines, and General Motors.
Subject to working out the details, you were talking about going toward at least a defined contribution system.
I am definitely subject to details, looking at a major change in the way that we do and the way that we have the pension system, the state of Illinois, especially, and because the Constitution protects those that are already in the system, it will be for those that come to the new entries once the deal is done. And that is a two-tiered pension system.
And do you think that major change is likely to include a change to a defined contribution system as opposed to a defined benefit system?
My sense is, in regards to all the details fine to it, I think there will be a complexion of defined contribution.
Okay. And so assuming that happens on the pension side, and the other major reform you said
is Medicaid.
Is Medicaid. Assuming those two things happen, then do you think you would look at an increase in the income tax
Are you
or the
saying
sales
you,
tax?
Dan Rutherford, or you, the collective body?
Well, no, yeah, you, Dan Rutherford, both in your role, assuming you became the state treasurer and had that office to use as a bully pulpit, and for the remaining 9 or 10 months in your role as a state senator, you may have a chance to even vote on it before.
Oh, I'll bet we do have a chance to vote on it before.
So assuming those two reforms are done to your satisfaction, are then you pretty open to an increase in income and sales tax?
No. I will be looking at the entire, as I said, those are the two major issues that must be fixed. Yeah. Those two things must be fixed.
You know, now, those two at a minimum, you're saying, but you may want more.
Absolutely.
So when Dan Prof says, and refer to Dan a lot just because I think he's thought this through. I'm not saying we don't endorse candidates, we don't support or not, but Dan gives us a lot of ideas to discuss on this show. I'm sure he's not doing it just for that purpose, but it is beneficial. He talks about big ticket state systems that have to be reformed: healthcare, which you've mentioned,
right,
education, which we didn't discuss, pensions, which you've mentioned, transportation, which we didn't discuss. I've coined the acronym HEPT, H-E-P-T. Okay, we'll see if that sticks. So education, you might say that's far afield from being a treasurer, but you've just raised that issue. Is that an issue, a big ticket state system that you think has to be reformed in conjunction with any tax increase considerations?
I mean, it has to, because it's such a large part of our spending. But then you're going to get into, the devil is always in those details, Jeff. It's is it vouchers? Is it performance, output? I mean, what we need to do is we need to look at, and I think everything is fair game to be looked at, and transportation, as you talked about, is one of those as well.
Well, would you like to see more school choice, whether it's school vouchers, whether it's charter schools?
I have a voting record that says so.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. I mean, the answer. And
so you're
again,
for that school choice?
I am for
both school vouchers and charter schools.
I am for it in the context of the overall package, and that's the part that I'm very sensitive to about giving a check-off answer, yes or no. I mean, government is too complicated, and for our viewers, they don't want to have it just be the simple yes or no. I mean, that's the nice stuff, but you need to put it together in the whole package of what it means to the end. When I negotiate contracts in my company, when I negotiate contracts, I don't negotiate a line and a line and a line and say yes or no. We've got ourselves, we put the check mark by it, and once we get the collective result, that's when we make the final decision. That's why I believe government should be governed.
But as a state senator, they raised the cap on charter schools. You did, both in the State House and the State Senate, right? That legislation passed. You supported that, right?
I did.
Would you support lifting the cap and just say, at least in the inner city areas, have as many charter schools as they want? Why should we limit that? I'm not opposed to that. Before I give you the absolute, I want to understand the dynamic to it. Okay.
Again, I don't cut a deal on a piece of legislation until I know what the fine details to it are.
Let's go over the social issues. As we were saying before the show, people might find that odd to talk about, but they often say state treasurer may move up to governor, so they want to know the views of the social issues of their state treasurer for that reason. Gays, guns, God, abortion.
Okay.
I think Howard Dean used that phrasing once.
Sure.
Okay. Gays. You were one of the 3 votes in the state Senate for, was it House Bill 101? The Human Rights Amendment, whatever.
I don't know the bill number. Yes,
yeah.
I voted.
The Gay Rights Amendment.
No, I don't. Well, it's not a gay rights amendment. I mean, that's
less discrimination based to
Sure.
try to remove discrimination based on sexual orientation in housing, employment.
There was 3 or 4 areas.
Credit, yeah.
Yeah, there was 3 or 4 credit. I mean, so
Pam Altoff voted for that. Chris
yeah.
Fedonio and you, three of the Republican senators.
That is correct, and it passed and it's become law today. I do not believe we should have discrimination, and I support that. It isn't new that when I was in the Senate,
Can I interrupt?
supported this.
I'll just say we continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, Dan Rutherford, running for treasurer in the Republican primary. He has no competition, but he will in the general election. You're watching the show on January 24th, 2010, before the election. Most of you, if you're watching on the web, you're watching it if you're watching on TV in Rockford, in Chicago, in Aurora, in Chicago metro suburbs. Most likely that's after the election. If you're watching it on the web, most likely it's before. Keep that in mind. And what you just saw, go right ahead.
I will. And it's a human rights bill. I believe we should not discriminate against people for borrowing money because of their sexual orientation. In regards to guns, I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I do support concealed carry. I believe it's something we should have. In regards to the issue of abortion.
Would you support a ban on assault weapons? In the state level? There was one on the federal level that lapsed.
I know.
Should we ban assault weapons?
No. And in regards to abortion, I'm pro-life. I don't use that as the
same-sex marriage or civil unions?
Let me finish here. In regards to abortion, I don't use that as my
But
forte, as the first thing out there. But what we're doing right now in regards to the social issues is you're trying to have those be the definer of a good Republican from a bad Republican. And I don't think you should do that. Not necessarily you, but I don't think you should do
Roe
that
v. Wade.
from the...
Would you like to see Roe v. Wade overturned?
That has nothing to do with the state treasurer's
No,
office.
but it will be. We should preface the discussion. If you run for governor someday,
if we're running for governor someday, then we'll have that discussion.
So you don't want to answer that?
No, it's not. I'm trying to avoid it. It's when you find discussions going out there of people trying to go into something that has absolutely no relevance.
You won't say anything about parental notice?
I support parental notice. Now, I mean, does it mean it's 16, 18? I've got a voting record on that.
Does it have to be a parent or a legal guardian, or would you say parental notice?
You know what? I'm all about your rapid fire, rapid response, but they have nothing to do with the office of the Illinois State Treasurer. I am pro-life.